Hey everybody, welcome back. Okay, in the last podcast we did a little bit of intro to PHP and we talked about, I kind of jumped right in with something called functions. And functions, you know, they're really not necessarily the first building block of PHP, but that's where a lot of the power of PHP occurs. They're also, you can build classes and things like that, but that's a little more advanced. But basically, I showed you how to give it functionality. And if you remember from the last podcast, there's two types of functions. There's built-in functions that are universal to anybody running PHP that you can call, and then there are user-defined functions. They're functions that you would actually write, and we haven't looked at any of those yet. And we'll look at those later on down the line. I want to show you how much power you can get out of stuff that's just built into PHP. But today what I want to do is talk about variables, and what is a variable, how does it work, that kind of thing. And to begin, let's open a new text document, and let's say save as, and let's just call this variables.php. Okay, notice that when you create PHP documents, remember you have to have the extension .php. Right now we're going to put this on the desktop. We can't leave it there because remember with MAMP you can't run things off the desktop, but I just want to show you how this works. Right now what we're going to do is go ahead and invoke PHP by using the less than sign question mark PHP. Remember to close that tag out with the question mark greater than sign. And so now that we have our tags, we can give PHP some information in here. So let's go ahead and let's look at what a variable is. Well, a variable, think of it like this. It's like a little box, and inside that box you can put data, and you can change that data out inside that box. Maybe in one case, it's that data's, you have a variable. Okay, let's show you this. If you have a variable called name, okay, and I'm using a $sign, let me explain that in a minute. And let's set this to equals and then a string, so it's going to be Dave. Okay, so we have a variable called name, but you know, maybe in one instance it's going to be Dave, and in another instance it's going to be Mary or Bob, but we always refer to this variable because we need to reuse whatever content's in there. So you get a great deal of power out of PHP in using this, or any object-oriented programming language, by setting up variables. So the variable's called name. Now notice I used a $sign before name, and this is required in PHP. That's how PHP knows this is a variable, because it sees the $sign. You may name your variables anything you want. I could call that first name, I could call it surname, I could call it nickname, I could call it all kinds of things, but it has to have a $sign in front of it. And just like everything else we've talked about in JavaScript and PHP up to this point, that remember, you may not, similar rules apply to everything we've talked about. You cannot use spaces, you may not use punctuation. It is a variable. You may use an underscore if you need to, and you may use numbers and letters, and that's it. So remember that, and remember it must include the $sign. So if I have a variable called name, and then let's just use the echo command, say echo name, what do you think PHP is going to do? Well, it's going to echo Dave. Let's close this down. Let's test it. If I go into my htdocs folder, if you haven't watched the episode on MAMP or WAMP, or how to set this up, I want to, basically it allows you to set up a folder on your computer, which is htdocs. I created a shortcut. That folder actually lives in the applications folder on the Mac and in WAMP, or excuse me, the MAMP folder. On Windows, it's going to be your C drive, programs, WAMP, www, I believe is where it is. Don't quote me on that. Somewhere in there. But consult your local documentation so you get that right. And so it will run now as long as MAMP is running. And I do have MAMP running. Let's open the start page. And remember, we get to that directory by cutting off all this stuff. So it's localhost :8888. And say return, and I can see here's the variable.php example. Let's open that, and you can see it printed out the variable Dave. Okay, wow, exciting, huh? But I just want to show you here, I mean, the point is not to show you that we can write one word using code, but the point is to show you what a variable is. So if I change this variable to Sue, and we'll go back and refresh that page, now it prints out Sue. So the variable content can change, and I can refer to that by the variable. So we're saying echo name. So that's what a variable is and how it works. Now, I need to show you this too. There are three types of variables, okay? This first one we've done, this is going to be, let's do another one. Let's say name equals Bob again, okay? Poor Bob. Okay, now, this is, the type of variable here is a string, and a string is basically some text or a group of text. It's going to be literal. So we can say, actually make this a sentence. I can say Bob is a cool guy, and that is all the content created. It can be punctuation, it can be text. So when I echo out name here, it can echo out a whole sentence, okay? So that's the first type of variable. That's a string variable. So let me show you another thing. If you use 2 forward slashes, it allows you to use comments in your PHP code. So let's say string type variable. And this has no impact on the code, and I can write whatever I want on there. It's just some notes for myself. You have to use those 2 backslashes. So, okay, so name equals Bob is a cool guy. There are 3 types, so here's the second type. String, excuse me, it's going to be a number type variable. And here's how you use numbers. Okay, you can use integers, you can use all kinds of things here. So we'll say variable age equals 27. Okay, now notice I did not put quotes around the 7 because it's not a string, it's just a number. Okay, and this allows me to perform math on that number. So if I, want to add 5 years to Bob's age, Bob probably wouldn't appreciate it, but I could say, in the next line, we could say age equals age plus 5, and then now echo age. Sorry, I can't type today, age. And you can imagine that what it's going to do is going to echo out 27 plus 5 or 32. So you can perform math on number functions, okay? And this was very simple. This was just addition, but that's why you would use a different type. Math doesn't work the same way with strings, okay? And then finally, we want to do Boolean. Funny word, Boolean type variable. And the Boolean type variable is this. Boolean basically is true or false, okay? Yes or no, something either is or it isn't. So maybe we can create a variable can drink, and this variable is going to be equals true. Okay, that's all that is. So usually if you echo that out, it's actually going to echo out a 0 or 1, which is a little weird, and I don't want to get too much into that right now, but basically if we can check conditionals, so we can use if statements, and we can say, if this person can drink, then they can go visit this webpage. And actually you do see that in action. If you go to any alcoholic beverage manufacturer's website, they usually ask you to enter, for legal reasons, your birth date with year. And basically if you're old enough to drink, you're old enough to see their website and they can let you in. So you would use a Boolean variable. You might check their age, and if you create another variable called can drink, and if the can drink equals true, then you could go in. So that's what true or false is. So those are our 3 variable types. We're going to get more into these as we progress into PHP. But right now, I know it's a lot to retain and there's no practical example here so far, but those are the 3 types of variables, and we're going to see those in use over, the next bunch of PHP podcasts. So let's move on now. We're going to go back to the includes function, and we're going to build a little project and put all this into use. So we'll see you on the other side.